Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legacies. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, it's for the sake of the story, but it does make you wonder. The fact is that Hope and Lizzie just happen to end up at a carnival that is full of vampires who've been kind of doing their thing for a while. It's just interesting. I mean, once again, it's just for the sake of the story, but it is just kind of like, oh, it's just funny that you just happen to come across that. But I guess it's like the chance, you know, you're the supernatural and you'll bump into the other supernatural world. You just won't always recognize it. So I find it funny because Hope is talking about how, like, oh yeah, because she doesn't care, like, it allows her to avoid. Well, because she doesn't care, she's always, like, running headfirst into risk. And it's because, in this particular case, Lizzie cares too much. It's like, no, you're about to put us in a risk. The reason I'm needed you around was because I don't care that leads us to risk. You caring too much is leading us to risk. So, no. Because when that little girl, Luna, was looking for her sister who was taken, Lizzie immediately wanted to help, which Hope was like, right, you're doing this because of the whole Josie thing. And she's like, no, it's not. It's like, okay, yes, a whole, like, sob story about a missing sister. Like, of course, like, that's going to, like, strike a chord with me. Especially because Hope is testing her the entire episode. Be like, okay, try your compulsion. Oh, that didn't work. Try to control your strength. That didn't work. So just being so annoyed, she leaves Lizzie behind, which is like, right, you're more trouble than you're worth, essentially. But it's like, having a heretic on your side is going to be nice, because for one, you're going to have a partner who isn't quite on even footing with you, but she's at least 2/3 of the way there. That's pretty impactful in itself. Her being a heretic, like, balance is a good match with your good match with her tribridness. So, but sadly, like, these vampires have been doing it for a while. They've been using this circus, or rather carnival, as a means to get people. And I love the guy confronts Hope, and it's just how he's like, oh, fighting vampires are a century old. I'm like, well, I guess that, once again, I don't know if they've ever really made that point. They're like, because the originals are the originals, so that's why they're, like, super powerful. But, like, Aurora and her brother and Lucien, like, they were all powerful just because they were, like, really old too. So I was like, it makes you wonder how old this guy is. No matter how old you are, it pales in comparison to, like, a tribrid. Unless you, because Aurora had the upper hand because she knew what was kind of, like, what was what ahead of time. Plus, Hope isn't in a good enough position to, like avoid the traps she was been falling into. So, like, Aurora could, like, use, like, her lack of humanity against her, but people who aren't aware of what she is, because they just look at her as like, oh, you're a vampire. Like, they probably don't even know much about the extended supernatural world around them. They just like, oh, we see, like, fellow predators, like encroaching upon our territory. So they didn't see her coming, so her being able to do what she did blindsided them. I even love that, like, she was, like, using her powers to basically force choke the dude until she, like, snapped his head off. She's like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Pretty cool. Which is like, oh, that's going to be so weird. Whenever you eventually go back to being the normal Hope Michelson, all this death and destruction is going to be pretty weird. I mean, granted, that was self-defense, because, I mean, you know, but I love that it's like, right, I love that he's like, oh, you're explaining vampirism to me, and it's just like, wow, you know, it's like, okay. And then, like, she was going to leave, but then she heard, like, Lizzie call for her, and I think that speaks volumes, because it's like, maybe it's just because of the sire bond that is, like, something inside of her stirred, so she was like, alright, fine, I have to help you. Because it's like, yeah, you don't care about anybody, so why'd you do it? And she was just kind of reluctant. She's like, oh, this is so annoying. But I guess this is because it's like, right, if I help you, maybe she recognizes the value that Lizzie has, so. And we didn't get to see it, but apparently off screen they just killed everybody. And I love how they embarrassed the main dude, and he's trying his compulsion on him, but it doesn't work, so. That's also kind of a morbid ending to that whole thing, where they just, like, sawed him in half, and then they were just like, yay! And everyone in the crowd was clapping, and they just kind of, like, bowed. I'm like, yeah, that is pretty messed up. I'm like, what did you do with the body? Did you dispose? There's no way you just left it there. I mean, because the way people were just leaving the carnival, even though police were arriving, it was like, I guess they called in a tip, but, like, no one else at the carnival knew what was what. Because everyone thought, like, I'm sure for everyone, it's like, oh my god, it's a part of the show, ha 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 ha, you know, so. But the little girl, like, I guess, like, they must have told her the truth about her sister. And I thought it was a pretty important thing, you know, what Lizzie did for that little girl, but also it was an important step for her now that Josie's gone. But I loved her saying, like, right, even if she isn't going, like, it is going to be hard, but you'll be okay. Because no matter what happens, she will always be by your side. She'll always be a part of you. You know, and I think it was nice hearing that. But she also says, like, right, even when we kill Aurora, she tells Hope, I want to keep this, you know, sire bond connection, because she's like, she's actually afraid of, like, she's like, I don't think I can go into the world alone right now, because that bond she has with Josie is kind of faded. And it is that thing of, like, she's been in this world for so long with that bond that it's like, yeah, like, losing that now, like, and now she at least has some supplementary, like, connection and bond, the sire bond, to, like, fill that void. So I think that's fascinating. Once again, it's just like the relationship Hope and Lizzie continue to have is always so fascinating. Once again, there was always, like, this tumultuous relationship they always had, and Josie was always somewhat a mediator to some extent, but then, like, the three of them became really close, like sisters. Well, obviously two of them are sisters, but, you know, you get what I mean. But now it is just them again without their mediator. But even Hope recognizing, maybe we can find a new way. Like, me handling things my way isn't really great and can't just fully go your way either. But we can find some middle ground. Like, no more rules, no more tests. Let's find our own way forward. A way forward for us that's really, you know, unique. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Once again, the one with no humanity versus the one with kind of, quote-unquote, no heart. The one with too much heart. Like, finding that middle ground is definitely going to be interesting. But this was a good episode of bonding. Despite everything, like, she was all about killing Hope, but it is interesting, like, oh yeah, I'm kind of putting that aside for now. I think when the time does come, she will kind of pull back on a lot of that. Because, I mean, she already was before Hope, like, did kind of, you know, end up killing her, so she did kind of rescind a lot of that. Like, she was moving forward, but then she got to take a step back because it's like, cool, I'm a vampire now, and Hope's kind of a monster, so she needs to be taken down. Oh, I can't kill her. Oh, well, I guess I just go back to not wanting to kill her anymore yet again. So it's going to be interesting to see how things kind of develop on that side of things. Then we catch up with Caleb and MG, and they end up going to find Ethan. Because, like, oh, there's stuff going on at his house. Like, oh, there's, like, a ghost or something. It's like, oh, they're thinking Ethan might have lost control of his abilities. And I love that. It's, like, cool. It's, like, right, we're random students that they met, like, once. How do we roll up on their place using the illusion ring? It's like, oh, I'm Professor Saltzman. It's like, okay. And Caleb's like, just act white. I was like, okay. But, yeah, from the beginning, you're kind of like, yeah, the way Maya was talking about is like, right, a football game would be on, some of the food go missing. You're like, yeah, it is just Ethan just, like, strolling around the house. I'm like, you'd think you'd be at least a little inconspicuous about it, but okay. Or at least be very good at covering up your tracks. So they perform a little seance and everything like that, and I love that, like, MG's talking, it's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, Ben and Jed, like, everything's cool, the curse is broken, so you don't have to worry about it anymore, but Maya was suspicious by it, but yeah, Ethan came here, not, you know, it wasn't that his powers went haywire or whatever, he just kind of chose to stay invisible, because he wanted to come home to tell them the truth, but he was scared, and I like how that ties into MG's story, because he talks about it a little bit. He didn't go in depth about it with how bad things were when it came to him and his family. I mean, especially like, well, his mom was complicated circumstances all on its own, but his dad was like a whole other level. Because his dad's a preacher, he frowned upon and looked upon MG as he was something foul and devilish. You know, so he didn't really go into all of that, but he just said, like, yeah, it didn't go great. Plus, his mom was part of Triad, so it's like, yeah, she was hunting down Supernatural, so, like, that put them in a weird spot, too, so. And I thought it was interesting growth for Ethan, too, because for him, he said to himself, all he ever wanted to do was be a hero. The moment he found out about Supernatural World, you know, him and MG being friends and just them doing their superhero thing. But then it's like, the moment he had a chance to be a hero, he chose not to be. And he's like, I know you're going to forgive me, MG, just because you're a good guy, but I don't deserve it. I haven't done enough to deserve it. but MG knows about second chances. And I like that he says this, because it still sits with him, even though no one else brings it up. But he's like, I killed Landon. I didn't ever tell you that, did I? Luckily, Landon was a phoenix at the time, so he came back to life. Granted, when I killed him, it's not like I knew that, because no one at the time knew what supernatural creature he was. But it's like, yeah, I killed him. And, like, everyone just kind of let that go. And it's like, yeah, and, and for him, he's like, I felt like for a long time I didn't deserve a second chance. And he ends up telling, and later on he says, oh, Caleb, I just told Ethan the same thing you told me when I killed Landon, Because he even says, like, right, my dad's a preacher, and he says, like, for people to kind of, because he's like, I don't deserve that, like, good treatment or whatever, but it's like, right, if people are willing to give that to you, that's your second chance. That's by grace. And it's like, yeah, my dad was wrong about a lot of stuff, but at least that one thing he was right about. And I love that. It's like, so tell your family the truth about yourself. And even if they don't accept you, I'll be your family until they do. And I'm like, oh, because I was like, that's so beautiful. I was like, yeah, I forgot. That's what I was like, yeah, Caleb was there for you. Because Caleb made that same declaration, like, don't worry, I'll be your family from now on. I was like, that was beautiful. Like, it is nice that this trio is kind of who they are. And it all kind of comes reciprocal like that MG was able to pass on with Caleb. And I think that proves that MG is the leader. I think this season is going to be that season of him fully stepping up. I think the groundwork has always been there. He just never had the confidence. What Hope said shook him, and he doesn't know if he's ever doing the right thing, if he's going hard enough, if he's not going, like, he doesn't know whether he's making the right moves or not. But I think all three of them together, bringing the Super Squad together in a new form, Super Squad 2.0, I think is going to lead the way to them. I think to MG finding his way forward, I think is going to be really interesting. So, as a leader, so. But told his sister Maya the truth, and she accepts. And I love, she's like, oh yeah, so like if you run into Finch or whatever, say hi. He's like, well, Finch is kind of single now, I guess. So that's going to be complicated. But we do know there's a Finch and Maya thing, which now Ethan's kind of like, okay. But he also knows, like, Finch's secret now. It's like, right, she's a werewolf. She was kind of hiding that from my sister, and now I'm part of the supernatural world. So, yeah, I probably didn't want to also inform her about, like, yeah, Finch is also kind of a werewolf. Yeah, you said you didn't want know anything more about the supernatural world, so, okay. But, nevertheless, you got Caleb back on the Super Squad as well, so we're filling the ranks back out a little bit. Obviously with everything back at the school. I love that Cleo was like, wait, did I not tell you? And Finch is like, no, you didn't. And she even says later on, it's like, right, Josie was always her tied to the Super Squad, because she's always being kind of left out of those conversations. But I think going forward, it's like, right, Josie's not around, and we're going to need people to kind of be representatives of the Super Squad. And I think Finch is going to I think she's already kind of earned her spot on the team, or I think things are going to change going forward. But I thought it was interesting, like, Cleo was just so mad, because it's like, oh, everyone ever wants to use me for is inspiration. It's like, yeah, it's hard being a muse. It's like, well, it's not like you ever let people forget about it, is like what Finch says. It's like, yeah, but that's because people just keep bringing it up all the time and wanting to use me to get inspiration. It's like, you are kind of the crux of the story, like a problem solver, essentially, so. But I love that the moment, like, the intern principal starts babbling, like, yeah, no, like, all the monster stuff is under control, except someone here is actually drawing them in, and everyone's most likely going to die. We're all going to die, and he's freaking out. You're like, what the hell was that? It's like the moment he took a drink. Because I thought from the beginning he was going to do that, but it's like, no, it's not until after he took a drink, but it's like, right, everyone got truth-weeded. So, the truth's kind of coming out of everyone's mouth, so. And the moment Jed started being around Ben, I was like, oh, you're being weird about it. Because he didn't even really know at the time. He didn't really know how to explain what it was that he was feeling. But the fact he's just feeling all weird and confused. The moment he's like, Ben, I don't want to be around you. I just want to be alone. I'm like, you like him, don't you? I was like, wow. I was like, because last episode I was kind of getting those vibes. I'm like, are we getting like a him and Jed thing going on there? I was like, okay. That's interesting. I was about to, because I kind of got those vibes last episode, especially because they brought up, like, Ben's love story with Ash and everything. I was like, oh, they're going to kind of replicate that a little bit with Jed, so that's going to be interesting. Has he actually ever, over the course of the show, he's never actually been in a committed relationship. The last time he was with someone is when he was with, oh my god, what was her character? Olivia Leung's character in the show. I'm blanking on the character's name now. Jesus Christ, I'm literally blanking on it. But like when he, like, him and her were having like their affair behind MG's back. That's the last, but it was not like a committed relationship, you know? So it's like, I don't think we've ever seen him in one. He's liked people before, but this might be etching towards like his first committed relationship in the show. I think that's interesting. Just, I never thought about that till now. Poor Jed, we never cared about Jed's love life before. It's like, well, he kind of took a step back after the whole, like, screwing over MG, and it's like, oh, like, sleeping with his girlfriend? Like, yeah, that was pretty low blow, bro. But they eventually found their way past all that, so. But, nevertheless, new headmaster was Aurora. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, is she going to keep this pretense up long? It's like, no. Because she immediately got to action. It's like, yeah, she's asking all the students not about the truth weed. She keeps asking about the red oak in the back. It's like, cool. Because Finch would have known that something was up with that if she was in the loop about knowing, like, cool, that thing is the only thing in existence that could kill Hope. But it's been burned and destroyed, so there's nothing left of it. And she goes, and she finally gets Cleo alone, and sadly Cleo gets, well, that was a heartbreaking situation too. Because even I was like, what kind of long-term effects would that have? Because you literally, like, Aurora literally went in her mind and smashed what is essentially manifestations of her essence and of her being. She basically broke her inspiration to force it out and be like, oh, give me an inspirational idea. And the way Cleo talks about it later on, she's like, it actually hurts to do magic now. And it's like, yeah, like the thing that she was like, oh, I'm so annoyed about people constantly coming to me about, now I might not ever get that back because what's inside of her is kind of like broken. Like it might not be, who knows if that'll be fixable or not. I was like, that's super jacked up. But Aurora doesn't care like who she hurts. As long as she gets what she needs and wants in the end, that's all that matters. And the fact is she was willing to try and torture Ben. I love him being like, nah, go ahead. She's like, all right, you do this and this and that. It's like, nah, go ahead and try and hurt me. It doesn't matter. I'll heal. You know, it's like, I've actually gotten pretty good at being tortured. I mean, he spent so long being tortured by monsters. It's like, yeah, I've been killed on a regular basis, so it kind of means nothing to me. But then Aurora starts threatening everyone else. Because at the end of the day, Ben's a good guy. And he's like, right, I don't want other people getting hurt yet again because of me. Especially in this place that had essentially become like a new home for him. A place that he did kind of feel a little safe. Granted, it all kind of got taken back a little bit when Jed didn't want to be around him. But Finch and Jed do talk about it in the end. He's like, I think I like him. And I love Finch being like, yeah, I like him too. She's like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, it's a bit confusing and stuff. She's like, no, like, then we talk it out for as long as you need to. And I'm like, and I like that this whole situation is also bringing them closer together. Especially because it's like, right, she's missing Josie, so like having that connection with, not the same way, but obviously having some connection with someone, it's interesting. I think there's a nice parallel to like Lizzie kind of finding that void, filling that void a little bit with Hope, and maybe Finch is kind of doing the same thing with not just Jed, but maybe the Super Squad in general. Because that's the thing too, like Josie was her entry point to everything. Like, oh, these people, like, they kind of become her friends, but initially they were just Josie's friends because she was the new girl at the school, but she's slowly finding her way. So like I said, I think she's going to become part of Super Squad, especially because they're kind of, yeah, MG, Caleb, and Ethan's going to be back, but also it's just like Cleo's not in the best condition right now, especially because she said, like, man, it literally hurts just to do magic in general because of Aurora. But she got some inspiration from Ben, learning all she can about the gods, which he's like, yeah, but the gods have been asleep for a long time. Which does make you go, like, right, so the girl from last episode definitely had to be a god, because this episode was like, could she be a demigod? But it's like, no, based on what Ben can do, it doesn't seem like that's the case. Like, her being able to fly and stuff seems more like she's just a straight-up god and not just like a demigod like he is. Because he doesn't, like, other than the healing and stuff like that, and just probably being, like, just probably, like, stronger than an average human, but he doesn't seem like he has any, like, full-blown godlike abilities, you know? At least we haven't really displayed so far, except for, like, his immunity to magic and stuff. But it's like, yeah, if she awakes the gods, that's going to be an issue. That's the problem. Aurora's willing to do whatever she needs to, because she's always been a little unstable and stuff like that. But having been locked up for a long time, yet again, just all the stuff back and forth with her and Klaus, she's back to being kind of unstable. But the fact is that she is willing to go this far to awaken gods, which probably isn't going to go her way. She's going to be like, how I'm going to awaken you guys. And they're most likely going to, it probably won't even be, either it's going to be Hope and Lizzie are going to end up killing her. And then like her final middle finger is going to be like, oh yeah, like I did this thing. Just like Kai, before Kai died, he did the most terrible, well, the first time, he did the most terrible thing before Damon like lobbed his head off. It was basically he killed Joe. That was kind of like his final middle finger before he died the first time. He kind of made Darkside Josie, pushed Josie in a position to be Darkside Josie in this show as well. So his last act is always some form of middle finger. Because he was working with Cade and stuff like that. He was part of that whole thing at the end of, like, the Vampire Diaries, if I remember correctly. With the whole thing with Cade and stuff. Because he was trying to change, but he couldn't change. And no one would accept him trying to change, that whole thing. So, I think Aurora's going to do that. And she's probably going to release the gods, and she's not going to be around to deal with the ramifications of it. Or, she does awaken the gods, and they're just like, okay, cool. And then they blow her up or something like that. That could definitely end up being a thing, too. I don't know. It's not going to work out for Aurora. She's basically going to screw everyone over. Because even Ben's like, yeah, we're not just going to have to worry about Hope being worried about the gods. The entire world is. Because gods are just like, right, we've slept. We haven't paid attention to this world. Once again, if they're sleeping, though, what is her deal? If she's, like, up and about, like, maybe she's just kind of like a rebellious god where she's like, I came to this earth because I want to have fun. Like, you'd wonder, like, once again, like, how long has she been on earth? Is she the only god that's awakened? Which is kind of an issue if she won't even have to wake up the other gods if she comes across, because she had no interest, because she also kind of got blindsided by, what Lizzie's fully able to do as a heretic, but specifically being, who she is, being able to absorb magic and everything, but she kind of got blindsided by that, won't get blindsided next time, but all Aurora needs to do is find her, so there's at least one god walking Earth that's awake and not just, sleeping in the realm of the gods, but Aurora still might do that. It'll be interesting to see how this ultimately will all play out. I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.